Welcome to our Business Objects Advanced Calculations webinar. My name is Sarah McChesney, and on behalf of ProTech Training, I will serve as your host for today. Today's presentation should take us to approximately 45 minutes after the hour. At that point, our presenter will be happy to answer any questions that may arise. Please enter your questions into the question area within the control panel in the top right-hand corner of your screen. But for now, please let me introduce you to our presenter. Michael Ward has been working in the IT industry for over 40 years. He has been working with Business Objects for 23 of those years. Michael has been teaching with ProTech for over 2 decades, and he consistently gets outstanding ratings from his students. With no further ado, I bring you Michael Ward.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate that, Sarah. As most all of you know, if you've attended my sessions, and I think a great many of you have, I always try to provide you with excellent content, good experiences, good examples, and I will continue to do the same today. I go at a kind of a middle-of-the-road approach in terms of my pace. I can't do this as if it was at the basic level, but I'll try to incorporate as best I can for everybody to make it so that it's a good pace for you to be able to follow what's going on. A lot of the examples and things I do are available in the handout bundle, the best practice guides. You've heard me talk about them before. In all of our training classes for reporting, you get a bundle of over 40. We just added 5 new ones in for over 40 of them, including a whole new series on dashboards, building them from basic to advanced as well. So we always have great content. And let me get into Webby, and we'll talk about formulas, variables, and functions, calculations, and all that good stuff. Let me get into the system. I'm logging in. Many of you have single logins, so you probably don't have to worry about that. So we'll go from basic all the way through advanced, some of the things you need to be aware of and so on along the way. So let's generate our simple report up, and let's start talking about how do I create a calculation, a variable, or a formula. Those are 2 terms you'll hear used throughout Webby, and they're different. These perform things differently, but they both do calculations. A formula versus a variable. So let's take a look by creating a quick query from a universe. We don't need a lot of objects to do that. The early part of this will be mostly live, then I'll have some slides that I'll pop up on occasion and do some of the presentation from the slides. It gives me an ability to cover more content for you, and you'll just see it in that form versus me taking a lot of time to try and type it all in. So here's your standard query panel. I've turned off the preview window on the bottom, which you can do. So let me get my year, state, sales, revenue, quantity sold. 4.2 HTML feature. If I double click on a folder, I get the contents of the folder in its entirety. So I didn't have to drag or the folder or the individual objects. I didn't want anything but sales revenue and discount, or quantity sold rather. So I will remove discount. Don't need to worry about query filters. We're not interested in filtering. We want all of our data. So let's get the preliminary out of the way, and now the fun begins. What we want to be able to do is take the report, and we need to do some additional calculations. All right. The Web Intelligence product has a very robust calculations module built into it. It's very complete. A lot of you are used to using things like that in Excel. Tableau and Power BI grew as a product and added a lot more in the way of calculations and function as well, because we need to be able to calculate for things that aren't there. That's the whole reason for this. You notice when you're in the report viewer window, if you take a close look at the left side here. It gives you all of the available objects that you brought in. So I brought state, year, sales, revenue, quantity sold, got my default report, standard. By the way, I'm running Service Pack 7, and Service Pack 8, by the way, was the latest that came out with just fixes only, no enhancements. So you'll notice little differences from 7 versus 4, 5, and 6, because they've added functionality. In this case, notice the default color. You no longer get a blue background with white lettering on top of it. But if you take an existing report and copy it over, it will carry that forward. Notice there's a variables folder for local variables, and that's a good thing. We're going to have to do local calculations because there's no way in our universe or a data source that we're pulling from that we could ever hope to have every conceivable calculation you could imagine, whether it's arithmetic, string-based, whatever. You'll also know another category called references, and this is a relatively new feature for reference cells. What this is an extension of variables, and yes, you'll get to see an example of it later on as well. What a reference cell is, it allows me to capture a very specific value from a particular cell. So let me do this. Let me take my year column, and using standard features off your very powerful analysis tab, I've done a webinar on that in the past. I'm going to do a break. And I'm running in the versions SP7, so there was an enhancement, I believe in 6 or 7, that gives you automatic subtotals whenever you turn on a break. Automatic. I don't like it. I like it and I don't like it for different reasons. But my only point is, if you get down to the bottom, there's the totals, but it doesn't give you the grand total. So what I'm going to do is a quick little trick here. Format table. And there's an option called table footers. That's how you turn just the grand total on, because it doesn't do it automatically if you choose to use this feature. And why did I do that? Because down at the bottom here, let me get the auto fit working first. It's always a little tricky, but we'll get it up and down so that cell is showing the values. What if I wanted to capture this one single grand total cell value? And I wanted to capture this one single grand total quantity sold. And I wanted to bring them up here as a variable, if you want to call it that I could use in arithmetic calculations. Maybe that's my grand total that'll become the denominator of a variety of different calculations where I use different values in the numerator. We do it all the time. You do it with Crystal, you do it with Power BI, you do it with Tableau, and we do it in Webby all the time as well. Well, that's a newer feature that was introduced in 4.2 called references or reference cells. So I could create a reference cell for the 44 million, the 276, and I could create subtotal ones for every one of these. Then I could reference those in all different types of calculations. It's as if they're an extension of variables. They really are. The only difference is they categorize them separate because they're scalar value, they're single value. You point to a cell to bring in the value. We'll talk about those later on as well. We'll do an example where I'll actually pull it in for this one. It's a classic example. Let's talk about formulas versus variables. You heard me talk about both. Let's talk about it right here. I need to create a calculation that will take the sales revenue and multiply it times 6%. Maybe it's a tax or some kind of I don't want to say a bounty, but a tax of some type that's being introduced. So the first thing I need to do is if I want to create a formula for that, I need a column to put it in, or a row or a cell if it was a single value that I was trying to do as a calculation as well. So from the sales revenue column, we'll do a right click. And what we're going to do is insert, the old insert. We're going to insert a column on the right. I could have done it on the left. On above row or below row, I would use that if I was creating a cross table or a pivot table. We'll do a column on the right. And now I have a place to hold my formula calculation. That's the thing about formulas. They have to have a home. Because this is on a row by row calculation, I want it within the body of the vertical table that you see. So I'm going to click below the title, but somewhere directly below. And now if I wanted, I could type the formula right in here. Typical equals, and then sales revenue times 0.06. But I want some assistance. I don't like this little window. I need a big window. So Webby said, well, go over here to the left, take the FX button, click the formula window. There it is for the formula editor. And what I'm going to do is define the formula by taking sales revenue, by just dragging it up or double clicking it up there. Sales revenue. Spaces are perfectly legal. I like lots of spaces. The asterisk, I'm just going to type in off the keyboard. And I'm going to type in 0.06. Basic, simple formula. Okay. We'll check it as you always should. Okay. Make sure that it's good and I do an OK on it. And now I have my new formula column as you see right there. Obviously no totals. I'd have to do that myself by using the analysis tab and doing a sum. But that's our concerns about the calculation. If I want to change it, I can go up here, change it in the middle mini area, kind of like Excel, or I could go to the formula editor and have the more expanded version, and I could change it in there. And by the way, I never remember where leading zeros are required or not, so I always, when I defined the formula, I put a leading zero in just to be safe. So if I want a title, you would double click in the title area, and I could call it tax, T-A-X, and hit the enter key, and I've got my tax title in there, and we're good to go. So logically, you said, well, if I'm going to do that, why don't I create a net revenue column to the right of that so I can follow my sales revenue minus my tax and get the net value? Oh, that's easy enough. We know how to do that. We'll do a right click. We'll do an insert. Say, let's stick a column over on the right. Everybody see that? Moving it over to the right side. Okay. Another blank column. And what I need to do is click in the body of the column. You have to be very careful in Webby, especially on the analysis toolbar. I don't want to be in the title area except when I'm formatting. You don't drag in and out from the title area. You don't insert a lot of the different functions on a column in the title. You always go in beyond the title area, at least one or more lines down there, because that's where you want this to be done. So what do we want to do with this column? I want to make it net revenue. In other words, find a formula that says sales revenue minus tax to give me this. So I get up to the formula window up here. So that's great. There we go. Let's take sales revenue. And we'll go up here and we'll do a minus. And we run into an interesting problem. Where in the world is tax? Where is it? Where is it being displayed? It's displayed as a column that I inserted and literally hard-coded in as a column, all right? So I can't really do that without repeating it. To do it, I would have to say minus sales revenue times 0.06, which means if it changes, I have to change it in 2 places. And what if I use this inside of another variable calculation of some sort, and it gets complicated? So what we need to do is say, well, how do we fix that? Well, if I would have created the original tax column as a variable, it would have shown up over here. And if you noticed a minute ago when I opened up the formula window, the variables are available inside the formula editor, as well as you'll see in a couple minutes the variable. What I really should have done is just created this as a variable directly. So what do? Webby's got a great feature that says, hang on to your seat, I'll do it for you. I click in the body of the tax column. Up here on the left, I don't want the check, I don't want the cancel. The third button over, it's called Create Variable. And I click on that. It says, give me a name for it. We'll call it sales tax. Okay. And if I wanted, I could redefine it. I could change the qualifications or whatever on it, whatever the case. New feature that you don't probably have in your service pack level unless you're up in 6 or 7 is the new description box for variables. Please use it. If it's a complex description you put in there, it'll pop up automatically as part of the self-help feature, and users will get that little extra bit of documentation. It's worth doing that, putting it in there. For time's sake, I won't, but you'll normally see me do that as well. So now there's my sales tax. There it is, all right? So now if I wanted, I could take the blank column. I could go up to here and say, open up the formula editor. Now I can take my sales revenue up here, go up here, do a minus, and I like to put spaces all around my calculations, sales tax, okay? Notice there it is. Checkbox it just to make sure. You don't have to. In the earlier release in the 4 you did, but now you don't have to check it, which, oh well. And now there it is. Okay, now this is a formula. The tax column is no longer a formula, it's a variable. Anytime you create a variable, you open up Pandora's box. Anything that's under variables can be used throughout the entire document. I can use it in conditional formatting and in other variable or formula calculations. I can do I can do everything. It's a fully functional variable that you've added in as a temporary add-on, almost like adding it to your universe. And from a best practice view, think about that. If you're building a lot of variables into your reports, the same ones, and your coworkers are, these are candidates to be built into the universe. Track down your universe designer and say, look, there's 24 of these we're all creating. And getting tired of saving the document over and revising it and so on, get them to build it in. That's a good thing. Now, you also notice the title didn't change. Now, I could double click in the title area and change it, but I'm too lazy. So what I'm going to do is grab the column. I'm running Chrome, so I have to go up and over to remove the column instead of a straight drag out that IE would do. So I took the column out. Now I'm just going to drag sales tax right back in again. Look for the little blue chip connector in there to get it in the right spot. Okay. And there we go. And so I've got now sales tax defined. And if I wanted to create net revenue from here, look how nice this is. It's an actual formula by definition, but I could also create a variable for that one. We'll call it net revenue. And again, there's a description box that I could utilize if I wanted to. Would not be a bad idea. I'm actually renaming, though, creating a new variable out of it. And lo and behold, this one is now converted. Now it doesn't have the title. So what I want to do is I want to take, if I could just double click in the title area, I'm not going to worry about that. At this point, we could convert that over as well, and it would show up in the list of variables. When in doubt, always try to build a variable. I know some of the users that I train, I do a lot of advanced Webby training. I get users that are just used to building the formula and converting it to the variable doing this. That's okay. Webby doesn't care how you create it. Create the variables up front. You could do it off the Data Access tab if you wanted to up here. You know, you could create a new variable here. If you go over to the variables here, you can right-click and do it there as well. New, copy, or paste. Those are all available as well. So part of the best practice recommendations, whenever you're confronted with a situation where you said, okay, I need another column of data. Should I make it a formula or make it a variable? If you make it a variable, you just drag it into your report. You're good to go. If it's a formula, you got to insert a place to put it, define it. Then you got to go up and create variable out of it, convert it over. But that's the point. You can do that. Very simple right up front. Variables are always better. They can be used inside of any other variable calculation or formula. It's like an extension. That's the way to go. All of your analysis features up here, from doing local filtering to ranking to breaks, sorts, and all that, can be done on variables. So if I create a variable instead of a formula, I'm good to go as well. Here's the other problem with that. What if I decided I don't want this net revenue column in here? It's currently a formula, so I drag it out to remove it. Now it's gone. But now I want to put it back. Oops. I don't have a variable defined. It's not directly referenceable. So now I have to reinsert a blank column to the right. Then I got to open up the formula editor, and I got to build the calculation again to put it back in there. All right. So we fortunately, the net revenue we do actually have out there, so we could put it back in. I had actually converted over a minute ago, but if it had been just a formula, we would have lost the ability to do that. So when in doubt, try to create a variable instead. Also notice the self-help feature. I love this. So many people, especially newer users that aren't quite as comfortable with things, you don't rely enough on these self-help messages. Look at this. Without me even clicking to edit, I don't even have to open up the net revenue calculation variable in the editor in order to see how it's calculated. Not only will I see the new description, but I also see how it's being built. So if you had 10 or 12 or 14 or 20 different measures calculations, you could scan down the line by just moving your mouse and the help messages come up. Why not take advantage of that? That's exactly what we want to do. Okay? So typical thing about from a basic to an advanced level, if you can create all your variables right up front instead and then drag them out, you don't have to do the formula situation where you insert a row or column or a cell and put all the pieces in there as part of that as well. Now let's go to the other extreme. Let's look at how can I build a variable directly. And what we're going to do is an example to incorporate in a couple other features. One of the very common things that we like to do in creating Webby reports and calculations is use if-then-else expressions. And what I mean by that is based on certain values, kind of group things together. So what I'm going to do is an example of state, where I want to take the states, I want to create a new variable called region, and let's look at some of the more advanced functionality that Webby provides to help us make that easy for us. Now, some of you that have been through my prior one on Analyze This or whatever, some other ones, you automatically know about this feature up here, a feature called the group button. Remember the group button? If I hit the group button, this was introduced in 4.1 late. It allows me to dynamically group things together. It automatically supplies me with the values, and you can check mark the ones you want, and you can use a group and give it a name and so on. I'm not going to go back through that one. That's automatically available to you as part of the group function for your dimensions. But what if I was doing it a different way with an if-then-else expression? And I like to do this example because it's easy to see what the similarities and differences are. So what I'm going to do is just create a new variable here right up on the left. We'll do a right-click new. We'll call it region for the region. Okay. Oh, and then what I want to do is I could put in a description for it if I wanted. And what is region? How is it going to be defined in the formula window part of it? Notice when you create a variable, you have an additional box on top. You have all of this information here that you would not normally see. Formula starts here and goes down. Now, if you notice, whether it's formula or variables, on the bottom half of the window, or bottom third, you'll see 3 frames or areas. The available objects is on the left. Notice all the documents you brought, or the objects you brought in from your query are there. Your variables you created, and any local reference cells, which we'll cover later. In the middle are what are called the functions, the different function library. That is incredible, and that's part of what we're going to be talking about today. On the right side are operators and so on, things like enlist and other functions that you could utilize as well. So what we need to do is develop an if-then-else expression. So I'll start with an equal, and I need an if. So as it turns out, under miscellaneous is where the infamous if statement is stored. It's infamous to me because I use this all the time in doing different types of conditional assignments. So if you click on the if you click on anything in any window, you always get some type of a descriptive message. This is awesome. And so many people out there don't take advantage of this. It's telling you generically what it does. If Boolean value, then true, else false. All right? You said, well, you know what? That's not enough for me. I need more. Well, there's a more on this function that I wish more people would utilize. We'll click on that. And it brings up the help tab for that particular feature. And back in late 4.1, they enhanced the whole help functionality, and they split it into 2 windows. The 2/3 on the right side is relative to your specific function that you're working with. The left side is like a little index, the 1/3 part of it, where you could look up documentation for anything. And a lot of my customers will dump off the entire library and print it up in a nice booklet form to make it easier. The if-then-else is here. It gives you the function group, the general, and whatever. And typically you'll go into the specific examples on the bottom because you want to know how to use it. So many times people don't take advantage of that, and they can't figure out how to do something. Get into more complex date arithmetic or calculations, use the online help as you see right here. Now you'll notice another interesting part about it. Look at the example. Second one, if sales revenue greater than 1 million, then high revenue, else revenue. All right. I could have had an else if statement if I wanted to as well. The problem is many of us come from the Excel world. We're used to doing functions. We want an if function. If, left parentheses, sales revenue greater than 1 million, semicolon, high revenue, semicolon, low revenue, or something like that. Well, Webby said, hey, don't worry about it. I'll let you do it either way. No problem at all. She said, well, what about help? Well, if you go to the related information, if, what this will do for you, and I like to show people because a lot of us are used to using the Excel function for it this way. It gives you a second set of documentation for the if, but this is the if function version of it, which maps back to Excel. So if you said, I want to do it this way instead, I'm an Excel bigot, I like working the Excel type functionality, you could do it here as well. But how nice that is documented to help make your life easier. So do an equals, and if you type in something, it'll try to bring up something that it recognizes. So the if brought up kind of a little function thing for that. I want to say if my state, so I want to get out of there. So if my state, then I need an is in the list of values, so the infamous in list that we're used to working with many products. We have a similar function in Webby called in list. It's over in the available operators window. And let's scroll down and find it here. And I'll type in INLIST, I-N-L-I-S-T. Now, if you're not sure of the format, there's your INLIST. You can actually look it up in the help. I'm not going to do that for time's sake, but it's left parentheses. And then in double quotes, you put your values. So what I want to do is say, if my state is in the list, California, Colorado, I've got to put double quotes around it, spell it correctly, remember which separator, semicolon, colon, what is it? Well, Webby came along and said, there's a values button here. Let me show you this. And if I highlight state on the left and I go to the values button, it allows me to do this. It brings up a list of values. And this was actually introduced in 4.1, not 4.2. And I just multi-select the ones I want using your standard controller shift in Microsoft World. So I want Colorado and California only. And I got on to doing OK. And look what it did. It automatically plugged the values in. I put a closing parentheses, and I say if it's equal to that, then double quote West Coast. Closing double quote, and I can stop. I don't have to continue on with it. But look at how the INLIST saved me state a ton of time. Many of my customers will come back and say, oh my God, I've been running in 4.1 or 4.2, didn't know that. And I have multiple INLIST buckets for different values I'm trying to reset. And 10, 12, 14 of them. Look how much time it saves you. Good thing to check it to make sure. We'll do an OK on it. Now notice it's going to create the new variable on the left, but it didn't put it in the report. That's correct. I'm creating the variable new. So if I drag region in, drop it into place, in the right place, lo and behold, there you go. So that if then else expression, boy, is that a nice option to have that INLIST function available for us as well. It makes it a lot easier. And this is a variable instead of a formula. It can be used throughout. Okay. If you want it, you can build variables into all of your report blocks as well as chart blocks. You're not limited in any way, shape, or form. And it gives you the ability to do some pretty cool things. Let's do this. Let's go back to variables. Let me take a few minutes to highlight some new ones, and then we're going to do some more examples. We'll do a new. So I've asked that they expand this window out to be bigger than what it is up here, because you can only extend it so far. I lock it in and extend it. I wish we had more space to work with. The left side, just remember, it's variable objects. Variables and reference cells will show up. In the middle is a collection of all the different functions. And I don't have time to go through all these, but let me just highlight a couple in the aggregate area, for example, that are available to you. Average, first, last, min, max. Here's a running average, running count, running min, max, and so on, standard deviation. Look how cool that is. All built in easily for you to use. Okay. Under character, I have an example I will show you on a slide later on. Character-based functions. The most common one you'll see is substring. I want to substring something. Look at the help. I click on substring, I get a help message. If I want more, I can get it. Substring, left parentheses, the name of the variable, starting what column, for how many. And these can be plugged dynamically. I'll show you a quick example of that later on. But look how cool that is. These are all built-in functions that come with it. And again, for time's sake, I won't go through all these. Data provider is an excellent category for you to get into for building more complex calculations. You can capture the data provider, the name of the university you're reporting from, or personal source. You could capture connection information. You could capture just the username, universe name. You can even capture the values of prompts. That's a very common one. Some of my advanced calculations for presentations that I do on dashboarding and advanced reporting, I use where I capture the values from a prompt using the user response, and those become part of the document that I'm building. Date and time is a very popular one. I'm going to show you a few examples of these off my one little presentation a little bit later on. There's a lot of different days between. Okay, there's dates between, which is a pretty new one. You need to take a very close look because they've added new ones in even recently. Here's time between, brand new one. Most popular one you'll see is relative date. The relative date's kind of an interesting one. It allows you to go forward and backward. Now, it used to default to days. And back in 4.1 Service Pack 6, they enhanced it, and they gave it a third option or parameter. And if you look down in the help message, I can say relative date of some date, comma or semicolon, and you put in the number -7, and the period now becomes something you have to pick over here on the right side. Let's go to M or Q area. What if I want to put a number 2 in here? I want to go forward 2 months. You would put month period in for that third parameter here, and that would go forward 2 months. If you put quarter period in here, it will go forward 2 quarters. It can be year period for years. There's minutes, milliseconds, all kinds of combinations. To back up, you make this a -7. I can back up 7 days. If I'm doing a date, 7 day coming forward, I could use it that way as well. This was enhanced all the way back in 4.1 SB6, and a lot of people miss it, but it's the most popular one. I'll show you a couple examples of it being used later on, again, when I go through a quick breeze through a handout. It's date and time, documents, a good one. Got some general stuff. Miscellaneous under numeric. There's a lot of numeric ones that have been created. The one that they don't have is random number. I have an algorithm we developed into a little variable that can be provided to you that will allow you to use a random number generator and kick it out for that. There's a rank function that's available there as well. So let me show you some advanced things you can do. I've got some reports already built for time's sake, because I want to give you all that I can. So demo documents, some of these you've seen, and if you've been to some of the recent webinars I've been doing, you might have had them. Let's go for number 1, bars in Webby. This is pretty neat. A friend of mine out east from Infosol, she had presentations she developed with this bar feature. I liked it, so I worked up an example so I can get you going. And here's an example. Well, I opened it up in read-only mode, so I need design mode. I want to be able to show you the calculation for it. So I had created a country, sales amount, a percentage, and then a bar chart. Let me show you how the bar chart's calculated right here. I'm using a formula for this, or variable. Here it is. It's called bar chart. Let's open it up in the editor. And here's the use. I'm using a fill char 9608, the sales amount percent, and there's your calculation, not complex at all. But it allowed me to be able to create this bar chart, this funny character here, the bar, all the way down the line. I had to do some work with the numbers to make it big enough to do that. But there's one other thing I did, is I applied conditional formatting to this column, and based on where it fell, I changed the background. So you see red based on something less than a certain value, blue if it was in between, and green if it was even higher. So again, just showing you, I created a variable, and then I turned around and added conditional formatting back on top of that one. That one's pretty cool. That's, again, thinking outside the box, taking advantage of the many functions that are available. Another one that I got out there, one of my favorites that some of you have seen recently, this is a much more advanced level, it's called the marquee. And I thank to my friends from Oakland County out there that are listening today. First saw them develop it. We've tried to work it into some examples. Thank you, Sue and Chuck and the crew there. And when it comes up, this is really cool. It was amazing how simple. Notice on top, I've got the marquee. User map table to navigate states. My fantastic master detail report that we develop in our intermediate class. We change it and add a stoplight over to the right side, red, yellow, green. We have a marquee. What does that marquee look like? The main thing on it is, let's look at the calculation. Let's just edit it. And here it is. And it's, you just have to learn the syntax and how it falls into place. And in the middle of it is where your text actually goes, is right in here, the text message you put in. And I can have more than one of these, but look how I'm taking advantage of the many different functions that are available. Some are easier to find than others. This one was less. One thing you did have to do to make that work correctly, by the way, was under Format Cell, that format cell come up, and we had to read the content as HTML. And the moment I did that from text, this started, the marquee feature kicked in, and away you go. And I like this feature very, very much. It's so simple to set up. And again, just taking advantage of the advanced features that Webby provides us. We have such a library, a rich library full of them as well. So let me go back to documents. Another one that's pretty cool. So we got the marquee out of there. Let's go to, where is the one I'm looking for? Let me go to my demo documents. That's where I have it put in there. Break tricks. Let me open this one up. Thanks to somebody out there, and maybe one of you that's out there today in one of the many webinars I've done recently, had asked about when I create a report and I've got subtotal breaks, okay, how can I rank based on the subtotals? That was a very good question, and I came up with two ways to do it. One, create a master detail report, and you just take the master cell on top and you're good to go. But here's the way we do it. What I had to do is, here's my running sum, well, not running sum, my sum value. I have a subtotal for every year, okay? And I want to rank it based on the subtotal. So this one's got 15 million, this one's got 13, this one's got 8 million, and whatever the other one is for the 4 years. 1, 2, 3, 4, there they all are. I can't really click on the cell and rank it, because the ranking is going to come up and it's going to do it at the detail level here. So what I did was I created a new variable called ranking. Here it is. We'll open it up in the editor. And I used the context operator. I said, I want you to sum all the sales revenue up for all states for the ranking. So it created basically a subtotal value, if you want to call it that. And then I dropped it in as a separate column, and later on I hide it, but I just did it to show you. I can hide the column later. And now I rank on this column using that. So for the ranking function itself, if you take a look, well, that was the break that we did. So what we're ranking here, I can go in and I can actually, let's apply the rank. That's actually what I need to do with this one. Oh, it is already turned on. Let's edit the ranking. We'll show you what it looks like. And here's the statement it generated. Based on ranking, rank by year, but using the ranking function, I used to find, give me my top 3. That's actually what happened here. I'm only seeing 3 years. So 15 million was the top year, followed by 13 million for the second year, and 8 million for the third. And it did not have to be based on a sum. It could have been based on an average. It could have ranked based on averages, or max or min or whatever else. But look at the simplicity. Using a new variable called rank, and all I had to do was use one of the context operators. In this case, you saw what I used. I did it for all. I wanted it for all states. So it created the value that picked up the subtotal break and pushed it to a more granular level at the detail level. And lo and behold, you see what we have there as well. Get all kinds of interesting things. Thank you, whoever asked that question, because I've been showing it to people in training classes recently, and it's been a real hit. So whoever out there, if you're in session today, thank you much for that. There's a lot of other new break features. I do that in a presentation on breaks and not on that. So we'll skip that one over for right now. So what I want to do now, let's do this next. I need to go to, where are my slides? Here. Advanced reporting. Here's the calculations. I want to do this presentation real quick. I'm going to breeze through it, but I have to do it this way because I've given you a lot of content live, or in some cases where I at least built it, but not all of it was doable. So this is going to introduce some of the stuff we covered, but even more. This is a very popular handout, one of the most popular in our training class. In our advanced course, chapter 1, we spend a lot of time on calculations, and we go through this presentation for it as well. So again, for time's sake, I had to do it this way for us to be able to get through it. So some background. Calculations are created because it doesn't already exist. Okay. If I create a variable, they're reusable. They can be embedded everywhere. There's a variety of different functions that are available. Some general information. But let's look specifically at some examples. Some of the changes you're going to see that I recommend here can actually be done at the universe level. All right. So you'd have to have a universe designer to do that. So if there are calculations built within the universe, we're okay. But if they're not, we have to do some work with it using, in some cases, what's called context. So let's go. Let me skip ahead. And the example I want to show you, this is an example just building a simple calculation to display a column in a report. We already did that. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to be able to get sales revenue for a specific year. Okay. So let me show you that example. So the first example I want to show you, here's an example where I'm going to create a new variable called current year revenue. So I'm going to sum sales revenue, and most of us are used to stopping right there. But I can add a where clause, where year equals 17. well, this, obviously I didn't update the slides for that, but it would have been, for current year, would have been 2020, hard-coded, okay, using this where clause. Then I can create another one called prior year revenue and use the 2019 and so on. And lo and behold, the extended syntax will show the value. And I can do the same thing for 2016, okay? All right, and it displays it there as well. But do I really want to do it that way? Is that really what I want to do? Don't I want to make it generic? Well, here's a classic example of how to take and split. This is a very common thing to do. Take revenue or units or quantity sold and split it out among multiple years. Most of you probably do it by creating a series of extracts, separate queries, and within that query you filter to give you just 1 year's worth of it, whatever. Then you got to bring multiple queries in. You don't have to do that. Here's what you can do. Let me zoom in on it, make it a little bit bigger for you. Here's an example of how I would take that current year revenue calculation and make it generic, so I don't have to change it at the end of every year by hard coding in each year. So you sum sales revenue where, but you don't put year equals 2020, format number of the year of current date, local date field, and with a 0 in here, so it does it for the current year. Then later on, we'll look at the next example, and it does it with a -1 to do it for the prior year, and 2 and 3 and 4. So you have the ability to build just a series of variables instead of doing multiple calculations. Not what you want to do. So it really opens up the door for you for your possibilities. And now you have current year and prior year, and you can do your straight calculations on them as well. Then we do a variance calculation, nothing new there. So again, just trying to show you the reuse of those. The context operators, I want to display the variance between quantity sold on a row-by-row basis. I just did an example of this when I did the ranking on subtotals. So instead of a sum, we're doing an average instead. And with the average, we use a average sold in quarter and in statement, so it does it at the quarter level and brings it down to the row level. So I can use that as an example right here. I want to take the average for quantity sold at the break level, but I want it pushed down to the more granular level, detail level, and I can do a variance between quantity sold minus the average, quantity sold minus the average, and so on, all the way down the line. It gives me the ability to do that as well for the variance. So again, just kind of touching briefly on these just to show you some of the ways that you can incorporate it in. In this particular case, the use of the context operators allows us to capture subtotals, whether they're average, min, max, sums, or whatever the case may be. Now let me go back here again. And what we'll do here is, I've got some additional options later on I want to show you for dates. Okay. So here's additional examples of using context operators. Dates are a big problem area because we're constantly trying to do date calculations. I need to be able to have today, tomorrow, yesterday, this year, last year available to me so I can filter on those at the query level. The problem is I can't do local variables and filter at the query panel level. I have to do it up front. Well, how do I do that? Well, I don't have a way of doing it. There's no way to create a local variable at the query panel level. So what I'm going to do is show you what you could do. Somebody could actually go into your universe, and there's an example out of the IDT example, but it's simple enough for you all to follow. Somebody goes into your universe and adds a date folder, and they put in today and yesterday. And today is equal to, this is how easy it is for them to do it, cur date. So now I can use today as part of my query filter, where invoice date equals today. And I can stick today in the operand for that. Or I can do a yesterday, which is the next one, which is cur date -1, or they did it a different way, using a function called decrement days to take it back 1 day. So now I have a yesterday, and I can use these two as part of a query filter. Remember, query filters have an object operator operand. This allows the operand to be today or yesterday or this year or last year or whatever, just by building in a simple set of dates. Some of my customers out there that I know of, I know some on the West Coast in particular, have a dates folder, and they do all these. They create all these automatically in a separate dates folder of its own that just deals with today, yesterday, this week, last week, this quarter, last quarter, things like that. And they build a series of not only objects, but filters as well. So again, here we're showing you how easy it is for somebody to do. So if you're not somebody that works with the Universe tool, but you want to do some of this, you can go back to the users, to your Universe people and say, look, I know it's easy to do. I have it right here in this presentation. Here's what you need to do. And here's the use of it. I did a filter in my query that says required date equals yesterday. Oh man, that's perfect. Exactly what we wanted for that as well. There's other ones. Here's a this year, and there's one for last year, and some other examples as well. Just trying to highlight some of the different things that you can do with it as well. And let's see. It allows you to use it in your query filters. That's what we're looking to do. And here's a dates between example, dates between first date, semicolon, second date. You could have a local variable that's got a date built into it, maybe cur date or something like that, but it allows you to do that as well. So a lot of really cool stuff. Let me go back out here. Whoop, wrong place. I want to look at the other, where's my other one set up here? Chapter 1. There's a couple other examples I want to show you. This is right out of our Chapter 1 of our basic, our advanced reporting book. So what I want to do is just show you just a couple additional examples of more advanced uses. Trying to give you a lot of variety in the 45 to 50-minute window, so you have a really good idea of how you can expand out and do a lot of interesting things. The part at front end of this is saving a formula as a variable. We talked about it. Convert them to variables, make them all variables. Life's a whole lot easier all the way around. And here's an actual slide where we summarize some of the advantages. Just some of them. There's even more than that, to be honest. But let me just jump ahead to some functions. This is creating a variable directly. So we've already done this example, so it's kind of skipping over because you've already seen it. Let's move into some of the functions. Okay. Function library really lends itself well. There's a new time dimensions created if you're an SP6 or above. I can right-click on the date and create a time dimension. Actually, let's finish out with that one because that keeps us right on schedule. That was one of several I wanted to show you, but that's a good one there. Let me do, let's see. Let me just close this one. I'll go back into Webby, leave that slide up just in case. Okay. As long as I have a date field in one of my reports, I'm able to do it, but I don't have any here. So we'll create a new report real quick. Real quick example. This is worth finishing up with. It's an advanced feature that saves you a ton of time. I get asked about this one all the time. I'm going to pick a universe. This time I'm going to pick the infamous Island Resorts. Where's my SQL Server version of that one? Because it's got a date field in it. This is awesome. This is one where I always like to thank my friends at Tableau because they're the ones that really had this feature in Webby, worked it into theirs, which is really cool. Salesperson invoice date. How much easier can it be? We'll run that query. Again, another example of some more advanced stuff that you can do with it. There it is. But I need to break the date out. Well, the old days, what you had to do is create a variable and figure out which function to use to strip the year out, and then the quarter, and then the month, and then the week, and then the day, and break it all out. Well, out comes this new feature. Now, again, I believe it's SP6 when this came out, called Create Time Dimension. I select the time dimension option. And here's how easy it is. Obviously, I'd rename it. I tell it that I want year, quarter, month. Maybe I don't want week, just day. Display additional attributes can be added in, so you can look at, for day, for example, maybe I don't want the day number 1 through 7, but I want Monday, Thursday, Saturday. You can change the fiscal period, and you can even set range dates that you want. Let's just stick with this. That's all I got to do. And then instantly before our eyes, look what we get. So now I have the year and the quarter. And the quarter comes out as a name or a number. The month comes out under a month name or a month number. And the day of the invoice date comes out with day name, day of week, day of month, and so on. And these are all functions that were invoked automatically. Look at the time savings. That is huge. Automatically generated as long as it's a legitimate date under the covers. So if you're pulling it from Oracle or SQL Server or DB2 or wherever, it doesn't matter. As long as you're pulling it as a legitimate date internal, look what it did for you automatically. That is absolutely huge. And so many people miss that. Again, it was an SP6, I believe, or 7. I used to know a lot of these, but there are so many new features, probably 100, that run from Service Pack 3 through 7. And I just can't remember exactly. It was 6 or 7 that it came out. Now you no longer have to do that, and look how easy that is to do. All right. So we covered a lot of content in that actually 50 minutes. I tried to, give you all the guidance, all the best practice insight as I could. I tried to mix up and give you a lot of good examples of the different things. Again, if you're in our training class, you get about 40 different best practice guides, and there's about 4 handouts that deal with just with dates. And you saw excerpts from 2 of them here today. I didn't even go through all of them. but just trying to give you a variety. I showed you the marquee and how we created the bar charts and a lot of other cool things, ranking based on subtotals. Webby has tremendous capability, and now you got to see from a calculation perspective all that you can do. So what I want to do at this point, so I'm going to turn it back over to our people here from ProTech to take this and run with it. So if you want to kick in at this point.
Sure. Actually, we've got a few questions, Michael, and there seems to be an overwhelming number of people asking if there's going to be documents or, you know, the what you've been sharing with us. If that, yeah.
It's very difficult for me to provide the handouts because we're giving you a lot that we give away in our training, and we want to get interested and get excited and learn how to do this properly. And I get questions from people all the time post webinars that have never had any training, and it becomes difficult. What I can do is I can pull one or two of the mini ones. I could pull out a couple of them selectively that I could make available to everybody that way. The big one was the calculations basic to context. That's one of four major that are part of our huge bundle. Some of you just had training from me in the last 3-4 months. You have all these already. For those of you that have been through it, there's roughly 40 of them that you get, but it's quite a collection. But what I'll do is I'll pull one or two, a couple of them I can pull out on some specific things that I showed you today, and I can make those available to you in electronic form post this as well.
Wonderful. Yeah, I've got some questions that I'll read out to you, Michael. First one is, what is the difference between a colon and a semicolon?
Most of the time, the functions in Webby require a semicolon. I can't think of where the colon actually is required. It's a separator. It's this kind of a standard separator, the semicolon. So when I did the in list, and then parentheses, California within double quotes, then I needed a semicolon and then double quote, Colorado, the closing double quote and right parentheses. That's just kind of the default separator in most cases.
Okay. And when will you start training on 4.3?
It's only just been released a short time ago, and we're still shaking it all out and working with it. We're working with it. We just haven't updated yet for the 4.3, but it should be right around the corner. The release only was just released maybe a couple months ago. We're still shaking it out because of install issues and other problems that we're having. So in fact, my personal recommendation, I've been doing this almost 24 years, is if you wanted to bring 4.3 up in a test environment, yes. Production, you need to think about that for at least another 6 to 9 months, probably, maybe more. There's some surprises in there. There's some really good stuff. 4.2 through SP7 and 4.3 have a lot of the same functionality, so you're not losing. But we will have it probably within 30 to 60 days.
Okay, and I've got two side-by-side questions from someone that came in about 20 minutes ago, so I'm not sure if the first question was kind of a in-the-moment question, but it says, what is the 9608 in the fill chart formula for bar charts?
All I know is that number is what gives you that type of bar. I've never played with the numbers to see what other type of bar or type of symbol you would get. But then that particular number corresponds to that type of bar that you saw. And then by just playing with the numbers and the ranges of numbers of the bar, it would be bigger or smaller. But it's just one of the default characters that corresponds to that 96 number.
Okay. And that same person asked, what happens to the marquee function if you export to Excel?
You're not going to pick it up. In fact, it should disappear. I have not done a test on exporting it out, but you won't get the marquee feature to show up. But I'm doubting that it would pass that along. I could run a test on it, but it will not, in either case, whether it brings it along or not, fixed or not, the marquee feature will not carry across.
The next question we have is from someone saying, if we have time, can you build off of your original region variable and make, for example, an East Coast?
Yes, I cut it off. All I had to do is when I said then West Coast, I could have added an else if statement. It's all one word, else, if, space, state, enlist, and then had the next list of values inside of an enlist statement and so on. What's nice about it is you can cut it right off and just build the first part of it and then add on a second piece later and a third piece later. And by the way, just as a point of contention there, I could have done that with the group function. It's a whole lot easier. It's a lot less work with the group. You just check mark, click group, and give it a name, and it's much quicker, faster, easier. So think about whenever you're doing if then else is to create string-based variables, is it possible it could be done with the group function? Because if it is, you save yourself a ton of time.
Okay. Next question: how do you calculate business days between two dates?
There is no business days specifically. You would have to define, somehow come up with a way of identifying what those business days are. I'm not sure how you would do that. I get asked this question all the time. They don't have a business day versus non. If it was just a scheduling issue, you could create a custom calendar of business days for every month of the year. But for regular calculations, not scheduling, but that, yeah, that you're going to have, I'm not sure exactly how you could do that. But there's no business days function of any kind inside of Web. It would be nice, but.
Okay, and I did get some further explanation on the book reference that you had mentioned that you were pulling examples from a book, like you referred to the book. Is there a book that they can purchase?
No, what it comes from, some of the examples I pulled were from two places. Well, I built up some examples for some of the early ones, and there were actual Webby reports that I just opened up for time's sake. But then some of the handouts is what I was referencing. In our regular course book, if you were taking advanced reporting, the giant course book and workshop book, chapter 1 is huge, and it covers all the calculation stuff that we covered with some other examples as well. It's huge. And then we have a series of best practice guides. Those are the additional books that are supplied in electronic form. And like I said, for calculations, I've got 4 or 5 of them alone of those 40 books, 40 handouts. They're part of the best practice handout is what they are. So if you take the training, you'll get a set, all 40 of them in electronic form. And like I said, I just added 5 new ones in that incorporated some of the examples you saw here and some other stuff as well.
Okay. And somebody has asked, can you please show again how you did the bar chart?
Oh, yeah, with it already built, it makes it very easy. So let me go back to, that was in my documents folder. I left it out there as a demo. Here it is, bars in Webby. Right-click modify, that's the correct way to open it up, the best way to open it up. And I just, thanks to a friend of mine, Heather from Infosol, she had an example that she had done, and I just like the bar chart feature. Here's the definition for it right here. Edit it. I'll show you what it looks like. And it's field chart 9608. I don't know what 010 or 10 or 09 would do, whatever, of the sales amount percent, and it created a fill character, a bar for it, basically. So just a way of displaying it differently. A lot of people like this. They like this format display here. So that's all that is a bar based on what the value of sales amount is, or actually percentage it's based on, not the value, but the percentage for that. Very easy thing to do, just taking advantage and knowing about, that particular function. There's a lot of functions in that library. I've never tried out every single one. I don't have enough time in a day to do all that. But the bar chart, again, complements, and my friend Heather had done it. I worked in a good example for me here so you could see how it is. And I did use conditional formatting as part of this to get the color. The bars were exactly the size you see, big, small, and in between. That wasn't enough visually. So I said, why don't I add simple conditional formatting? That was easy. Create a rule, 3 ranges, and you saw the color that went along with the bar. So just using what's there. There's so many cool tools available, and that's all I did with this particular one here that you see. Other questions? Keep asking.
Yes, I will keep going if that's okay with you. It says,
Yep.
Can we get time filters in Universe?
You should be able to. If it's a function, if it's available as a function in Webby, generally it can be incorporated in at the Universe level. I'm just saying that generically. I've built some pretty complex ones, but it should be available.
Okay, and the next question, it says out, but I'm wondering if they meant put. Can you put in more than one if statement in the region variable? Or maybe it is, can you out in more than one if statement in the region variable? That may have been
More than one variable? The region calculation, you mean, that I had done?
I think so.
Let me pop it back up again. That was the original new document here, I think. And there's my region. Let's open up region. So if state in list, else if state in list the next group, else if state in the next group, and I could have an else trap at the end that just says else undefined. This could have been a different variable. Maybe you have a different variable. States in the list, a variable name could be part of the calculation as well if you wanted to. But it makes sense because you're trying to set it based on values. Okay. And remember with that one, worth pointing out, what I could have done also instead is done a group function here, and the group says, it automatically tells me what all the values are when it finally comes up. Slow coming up, but it'll load it. Let me re-highlight it again. It's just to redo it. So the group provides a nice alternative to an if then else expression. So you want to think about that as well when you go through and do it. So next question.
Can you show the code for the varchar, the 9608?
That was the one, yeah, that was the bars in Webby. I just had that one up right here.
Okay. Okay.
It's this one right here. Fill chart 9608, and then based on what measure that it has to be based on. So the bars can vary in size. All right. I've never played with this to see what a 10 or a 12 or a 14, and maybe it gives you a different type of a bar. I don't know. But this happened to be the one that a good friend of mine used, and I really liked how that worked. And I liked the fact that I could go an extended add on to that and do conditional formatting to make it stand out even more. You don't really see this type of display in the normal charting with Webby, even though it's pretty comprehensive. So thanks to her, I extrapolated it out, and I thought it was a really neat example of displaying your percentages. A lot of cool stuff we can do.
The next question is, can you share a formula for time filters? And then it says for today, yesterday, this year, last, etc. filters that you showed in the webinar.
They can be done at the universe level by somebody at the universe level. That's the smart way, because then I can use those objects as query filter objects. Remember, a filter in Webby has object, operator, operand. It could be invoice date equal to today, or invoice date equal to yesterday, or a week ago, 2 weeks ago. It can be an object, or you could have a filter that you drag in that only filters this week's data, or this year's data, or today's data. But those would be best done if you're trying to do it up front at the query level for filtering, you would do it up there. If you create it locally, it's a little bit harder to work those in using the analysis toolbar here, because the filter condition isn't going to give you the operand for that to be an object. So, but yeah, what I showed you in the one handout was actually what you would put into the universe itself. So, see.
Okay. Can you show us those filters dynamically on the Webby report?
How to do it? I'm guessing is what they're asking.
Yeah, I guess so.
Let me just pop a report. Here's a local filter, very much parallels a query filter. Query filter is done up front. Object, operator, operand. Okay, 3 pieces, except for the is or is not no. So the way you do it here instead is, what if I wanted to filter on year? I click on the year column. The local filter button is part of the classic analysis toolbar. The big 3 that I always talk about when working with the analysis toolbar is filtering, breaking, and sorting. Those are the big 3. So all I got to do is click the filter button, highlight the column, hit the filter button here. Okay. And I can pick the years that I want. Oh, I used the wrong. I had a problem with that universe. I developed this against a different universe, but it would bring up the year in list, and you select your values, and it automatically filters the data. All right. That's how that one would work, all automatically for you. So the local filter can be applied in any column. It can be applied on the report tab. If I click on the white area and I hit the filter button, it does anything that you put on that tab, whether it's multiple reports or charts or a mixture. It doesn't matter. The filter at the white tab level here will apply to anything you stick on that tab automatically. So it makes it more of a report tab filter rather than an individual block filter that you see right here. Got a lot of good questions.
Yes, we sure do. And I'm just trying to see if there's anything here, because there's a lot of people asking about the handouts, but to your point, that will be something that they can get. You know, you mentioned 40 handouts with the classes that you're going to be teaching.
It's actually 40 handouts. 5 of them are new. Adding in like the bars was a new feature, ranking based on a subtotal, And there's a whole one on brakes. I'll be doing a future webinar on the magic of brakes with all the neat things you can do with brakes. So look for that as a future one as well. All the calculation stuff is covered in the advanced reporting class. So chapter 1 of our course takes up a big chunk of the last day of training, and it is incredibly comprehensive with lots of good examples. And a bunch of you out there have been through my training, so you know how good the content is. So.
And I'm just trying to see if there's anything else here. Somebody did ask, can we see the conditional formatting done for the bar chart?
Yeah, I was waiting for somebody to ask. Oh, I closed that out. I got to reopen that one back up. Bars in Webby, right-click Webby. It's a big part of our intermediate advanced. We cover conditional formatting. We actually do a very complex master detail report with stoplights in it that's really cool. So conditional formatting is on the analysis tab. It's on the back side of the group break sort button here. So for conditional, I would go in and I say, let's manage rules, because I already have one out there turned on. And if I edit it, each rule applies to whatever block, in this case, the column, that last column. And if the sales amount percent is less than 3, I go to the format button and I format it according to what you see with the text there, red, or the background there. I think we did the background in red is what we did for that one. Okay. And the second condition statement, sales amount less than 7. And with the less than 7, we do the format. And remember, with conditional formatting, you have text and background, or both. If I do text, that's the default anyways of what it changes. But if you don't want it based on text, but do the background color instead, based on the values, I would change it and change the background color and put the text back to black. I like the color, the background to stand out better. Just be careful so you don't make the text and the background the same color, or you won't see the values. It happens a lot for that. Standard conditional formatting. Conditional formatting is a rule. That rule says bar chart cell format rule. And it has 3 condition statements. It could have up to 6. And if I need more than 6, I would create a second rule and add it and turn it on at the same time as the first one. But that's your standard, basic object operator operand for condition statements within the rule itself. Okay. For that one. That was a good one because it gave me an opportunity to show you how I did it. It's really easy.
Do you have time to show time filter quickly?
No, not right now. I've got to build something on time. I have
Okay.
pre-built a variable on it, but that's a good suggestion for me to build into another report. I'll have to look at that for future. But the functions are very easily defined online. If you're doing a time between or dates between or any of the time functions, use the online help. I had somebody today just ping me with a question this morning, or yesterday rather, related to the time function, and they figured it out with the description online before I could even respond. You know, when you get training, you always get question and answer from me when a class is over with. I'm always good about trying to help you out. So they use the online description and figured out how to do it. That was pretty smart.
For sure. And as people are still asking how to request the mini handouts, does that just take us back to the best way to get those is to sign up for the classes that we have coming up?
Well, to get the full set, I could pull just one or two examples out. I can't do the whole thing for that. But let me pull maybe a couple examples out of some mini ones that I could send out to you that kind of whet your appetite a little bit. Obviously, my hope is you'll come in and have a great experience with the training. You know, I just completed a block last week for healthcare, and I did a block recently for another customer as well. You're going to get so much content out of it. That's the key. So I'll find one or two, and we'll do a follow-up email. I can work with Sarah on that, and we'll get it out for everybody. We'll pick just one or two of the mini ones.
Perfect. And I think that pretty much wraps up what we have for today. If you don't mind putting that screen back on, I wanted to just highlight to everybody that if you're interested in taking Michael's courses, we are offering them actually a slightly different format where we are introducing a half-day starting at 12 noon Eastern Time and finishing at 4 o'clock. And that is in order to attract both people on the West Coast and the East Coast. We're trying to make it so that it doesn't matter where you are, that you can attend this class. And as a special incentive for those of you who did register for this webinar is that you are eligible to get a 10% discount on the registration for these November and December classes. So as I mentioned, what would typically be a one-day course which is the advanced class, is taking place over 2 half days. And then the basic and intermediate, which is typically a 2-day, is going to be spread out over the 4-day. And it's a Monday, Tuesday, and then Wednesday is a skip day, and then concludes on the Thursday, Friday in November. So those of you who have taken Michael's classes before know that you walk away with a wealth of knowledge, and the handouts that everybody has been asking so much about, those are continuously useful for months and years to come after your classes, right, Michael?
Yes, and they're available in electronic form. And I even included my infamous stoplights that you use for graphics, and over 40 handouts on everything under the sun. You get all those in electronic form. And don't forget, each day we have a separate course book and workshop book as well. And by doing the half days, what we learned was it gives me an extra half hour to 45 minutes every day of content. So we cover more examples and more content for you. And you can still get your work done working around the 4-hour window. And it's, a customer asked for it. It's worked out just phenomenal. So you're not doing a straight day or 2 days or 3 days. We're giving you a little mental break. And you don't get off easy in my classes. We make you work. We do lots and lots of hands-on. If you're taking training and not getting hands-on, you're not getting value for it. You've got to be able to do it. So, and we challenge you as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I wanted to take this time to, first of all, Michael, thank you very much for sharing your expertise and giving us the hour, and actually a little bit over the hour, to answer these questions. And I wanted to remind everybody that we will be sending out the recording link along with whatever little mini handouts that Michael was referring to. And those will be coming out probably early next week. And in the meantime, if you're interested in registering for his classes coming up in November and December, you will see at the bottom of the screen how to reach ProTech, or there's the email address and the phone number, as well as our website. So thank you to everybody for joining us, and wishing you all a great rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Michael, too.